There are all kinds of election rules that affect third-party candidacies. It can become hard for third parties to get on the ballots in all the states. We have plurality election rules, which make it difficult for third parties to get on the debate stage. You'd have to get into a situation where the major parties don't find it as convenient to adopt their policies, which, because our two parties are so broad, that almost becomes impossible to preclude a third party's message from what the major parties' candidates talk about. So that, for that reason, it becomes really hard for third parties to become heavily involved because a lot of people know they're not going to win. They have a hard time raising money. They have a hard time getting press coverage. There are all kinds of obstacles that third party candidates face, and which makes them really unlikely to have a huge effect in an outcome of a race. Well, of course it can. It can express a lot of discontent. It can also express some interest in particular issues that the third-party candidate happens to be talking about. We know, for instance, in 1992, about Ross Perot got about 20% of the vote, 20% of the vote, and he clearly shaped the debate in the country in terms of the role in government and how money's spent, those sorts of things. So it can certainly shape the debate. There becomes a question of who they're taking votes from, and one side versus the other, those sorts of things. So that can end up being a big consideration when people are thinking about third parties. Well, spoiler means that somebody else jumps into a race that doesn't have a chance to win, but they take an inordinate number of votes from one of the candidates, and therefore they end up shaping the debate or shaping the outcome because they stripped votes from one candidate or the other. So, for instance, there are debates about whether Perot took votes from Bush or Clinton, and the academic research on it shows that it's really hard to tell. He might have taken votes from Bush, but that's clearly not definitive. So there are times clearly when a third-party candidate can strip votes or spoil an election, but we just don't find it happens for a lot of reasons, and a lot of that ends up becoming, I would say primarily, that when a third party's message starts really catching on, what you find is that the major parties adapt to that message and start taking it up on their own as part of their party platform. So it becomes hard for the third party candidate to get any traction, and in that way spoil what happens.